So I watched the first 3 episodes of The Wheel of Time, and I have a lot of thoughts. Some good, some bad. So this video is just going to be a discussion. It's going to be my first impressions, and then in the future I'll make a more in-depth review. The reviews have been all over the place. Many diehard fans are outraged at all the changes, while many diehard fans are pretty okay with all the changes. TV reviewers are claiming the show isn't Game of Thrones enough to be the next Game of Thrones. Nani? Which, I mean, they got a point. I get it, some people think it's too fantasy to be the next big fantasy. But anyway, enough about the reviews. This video is my thoughts, someone who's a fan of the books, but is also open to an adaptation being different. If you haven't watched episodes 1 to 3, then you probably don't want to watch this. Is this thing on? Hey, sleep-deprived editing Jay here to tell you that this video actually became too long, so I'm gonna have to split it up into 2 separate parts. So this video mostly just covers episode 1. Anyway, that's it. Enjoy the video. Okay, overall opinion. Does it suck? Is it as bad as some reviews say? No, it's not bad. It's gotten me hooked enough that I would have liked to watch episode 4 yesterday. I think it's good. It's not great, but it's not bad either. It's a lot better than some other fantasy adaptations we've had. There's some pacing issues, there's some changes that I think were made in bad taste, but I'm still gonna continue watching. There's a lot of room for improvement, and the thing is, this is a 14-book series that they're adapting. The first couple books are pretty inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, so they can still make a lot of improvements going forward. Now I know the show is meant for a general audience, not a bunch of book nitpickers. But I'm gonna nitpick just a little bit, because obviously they need to target the pre-existing fandom as well. Going into the show, I tried to have the mindset that this was just another turning of the wheel. The events of the book happened in another turning of the wheel, and will happen again. It's built into the lore of the series. But even so, there was still some things that kind of bothered me. But before getting too far into it, real quick, this video is sponsored by Into the AM. They've been helping the channel out a lot by sponsoring these videos, and they're back again. This time I want to highlight that they have a huge Black Friday blowout sale happening right now until the 26th of November. They have a Cyber Monday sale on the way as well, so this is the best time to buy some awesome clothing before the holidays. Into the AM has lightning fast shipping, they got top tier customer service, a 30-day money-back guarantee, and free returns, but you're not gonna want to return anything because their clothing is super comfortable. I've said it before, but honestly the items that they've sent me have become some of my favorite just everyday clothing, and you see me wearing a lot of it in my videos. Now they set themselves apart by curating original designs that allow all over prints to become everyday wear. They have a lot of cool designs, so I'm sure you'll find something that you like. Now you can use the link in the description or the coupon code captured in words to get 10% off your entire order. Thank you to Into the AM for sponsoring this video. So out of the 3 episodes, I felt like my favorite was episode 2, and my least favorite was probably episode 3. A lot of people liked 3, and that's fine, but there's just a few things that I didn't like as much, so I'll talk about that in a bit. Now, I did enjoy episode 1, but it did feel like there was way too much crammed into one episode. It kind of felt like Cliff Notes Wheel of Time. It could benefit from being longer, so they didn't have to cut out so much. If it was like 90 minutes long, I think that would have been perfect, or if they just had one episode where they showed the prologue, Dragon Mount, with Luz Theron, the whole breaking of the world, and then just went to the 2 rivers and kind of built the relationships between the characters so it seemed believable, and then the second episode, have the Trollocs destroy everything they ever loved. I feel like that would have gotten people new to the series more invested in the characters if everything didn't happen so fast. Now, I do think the show is going to do really well. Showrunner Rafe Judkins is weaving this into his own vision, though it does still have much of the original that we're familiar with. I wouldn't say it nails the execution, but it is entertaining. I'll get into some of the positives later on, but first, some of my critiques. Now, I just want to go back to the opening of episode 1. How could they mess up an opening so badly? It's like if Lord of the Rings decided to skip the whole Sauron ring introduction. that's meant to hook everyone right away. Instead, we get an opening with Leandrin and the Red Sisters hunting down some random dude. It wasn't even Logain. I just think it was kind of a weak opening, and I don't know why they would change it when the source material already had such an amazing prologue that would have been super powerful on the screen. However, the animated bonus content saves the day. Here we get to see the breaking of the world, we get to see the madness of Lews Therin, and it's pretty awesome. I love the art style. So after the Red Sisters gentle the man, it pans out and we see relics of a pre-breaking of the world. These are clearly skyscrapers with evenly spaced windows. I actually love that they included this detail. It's kind of honoring the sci-fi background of the Wheel of Time. Those are a lot of buildings though. Like, you think people would be there studying them or even living in them. Would the two rivers be that isolated if there is such an archaeological find nearby? It brings to mind a lot of questions, but I'm probably overthinking it. I don't think it matters that much, but it's a nice nod to the fact that this doesn't take place in the past or the future. Anyway, like 30 seconds into it, Moraine says that they don't know if the dragon has been reborn as a boy or a girl. And I'm sorry, but it just doesn't make sense. The scene right before it had the Aes Sedai hunting down a male channeler because he's using Saidin. There was no question whether the dragon reborn would be male or female, because the dragon had to be a channeler of Saidin, the male half of the One Power. I guess they just wanted to make it more inclusive, but like, one of the main things of the series is that there's an all-female powerful organization of magical women. So I think they kind of got that covered without breaking the lore of the series. It just doesn't really make sense. Anyway, it's time for some positives. The casting is better than I expected. I think there's a lot of chemistry between these actors. It feels like Mat, Rand, and Perrin have been friends for a long time. The show did a better job with building some romance between Rand and Egwene right from episode 1, but I do feel like we don't really get enough time to really care about their relationship. Also, I don't really mind the whole added romance with Rand and Egwene, but Rand is supposed to be awkward around women, and we see that kind of later on in episode 3 with the tavern girl, and Rand doesn't really pick up on the cues. Mat isn't really interesting until far later in the books anyway, so the changes they made to him and his parents actually fix that issue. Currently, Mat is my favorite part of the show. He's the character I'm the most invested in. He's got a troubled home life, he's stealing in order to get a lantern for his younger sisters, peddling with Padan Fain, which, wow, Padan Fain has that wicked grin. I can't wait to see more of him in the show. Barney Harris just owns his role as Mat, and it's a shame that they're recasting him for season 2, because there's so many times I was impressed by his performance, and he's definitely my favorite character. And in book 1, Mat was not my favorite character. There was also a lot of changes to Nynaeve. I think a lot of the changes work really well. I like that she was pulled away by her braid by a Trolloc, and then has this badass scene where she fights it, and she eventually tracks down Lan. Zoe Robbins does such a good job. Okay, so let's talk about the changes with Perrin. So he's got a wife now. I wasn't really expecting her to stay on the show for that long, but I wasn't expecting such an accident. An accident. That was bad. Obviously, it's really tragic that he kills his wife just acting on instinct, but I just didn't really buy their romance. I didn't buy their relationship too much. We never got a chance to really care about them as a couple, and then they just kill her off. So obviously she was just a character there to serve a purpose, the purpose of dying. Though, notice she was holding her weapon above his head, like she was almost gonna kill him. So there's a theory going around that she could have been a dark friend, which would explain the weird depression she seems to be in, and why she seemed a bit cold with Perrin. So basically the only purpose to this character was to build Perrin's backstory. It does kind of work though. It gives him a reason as to why he doesn't like using the axe and why he's against violence. Better than the book explanation that he's just big and he's gotta be careful not to crush things. This change makes it a much better explanation. Yes, Rand is great and all, but his father Tam warmed my heart. I enjoyed the talk he had about the wheel with Rand, and that sword battle scene was awesome. Also, the Trollocs look perfectly horrifying. Oh, blood and ashes, they're running on all fours. I'm gonna have nightmares. Moraine and Lan, I think, are perfect. I don't really have a single complaint with either of them. I love the way that Lan protects Moraine while fighting, stopping Trolloc after Trolloc from reaching her, and then dives to protect her from a collapsing building. They managed to visually show us the bond between them, and I think they pulled it off. There's a bath scene that I think is kind of confusing for new viewers because it makes it seem like they're in a relationship when they're not. Lan is from the Borderlands. They do unisex bathing up there, but there isn't anything going on between the two. In my mind, Rosamund Pike simply is Moraine now. The music and sound design is something I was a little worried about going into this, but I think it is excellent. I love that we can hear some of the old tongue in the backup vocals, and some of the music reminds me of the Witcher 3 soundtrack, which is one of my favorite soundtracks to listen to. Now, not to be insensitive or anything, but I feel like the choice to add so many ethnic diversities to the Two Rivers is just kind of confusing. There's one line where it's talking about the old blood, then in the next scene it's showing like 10 different ethnic races. And that just doesn't really make sense when there's supposed to be an isolated village. Also, it doesn't really make Rand stand out that well. He's supposed to be kind of different from everyone else in the village. Now, I was actually impressed with the Trollocs and the CGI and practical effects. It's much better than in a lot of other fantasy shows like The Witcher or Shadow and Bone. There's definitely a high budget there. There are a few times where it seems a bit wonky. I think a lot of the scenery and landscapes are beautiful. I think Emond's Field looks perfect, and visually the channeling does look good. But it's also pretty over the top. Moraine's hand movements and everything, it just seems a little bit funny. Also, there's so much weaves on the screen. I don't really know how I feel about the channeling. Let me know what you think in the comments. And they also made Moraine just extremely overpowered. I love the angry mob of Emond's Fielders ganging up on a Trolloc. Okay, you don't mess with Emond's Fielders. The whole scene when Matt frantically ran outside to go find his little sisters, that was my favorite part of episode 1. It was just so tense. We get these Trollocs that are like running on all fours. Matt falls over one of them. That just had my heart pounding, and it really shows how much he loves his little sisters. And then he says something like, "Do you remember playing hide and seek?" But like, dude, they were just hiding. They had a good hiding spot, but I guess it's a good call to get them away from the village. Again, I do feel like the battle went on for way too long in episode 1, and if they cut it down a bit, they could have kept some things in, like they cut out poor Narg, a fan favorite. That's all I was looking forward to. They also cut out the whole scene of Rand dragging his father through the woods and then learning something very important, and the ending of that episode just wrapped up way too fast. They just kind of decided to leave. You and you. We need to go. Should probably bury her. No, like right now, we need to go. Oh, okay. Well, it's a good thing the villagers don't really care if we leave or not. Are you stupid? There's an army right there. Oh, it's that urgent. Okay, I'm just gonna take this. I'm surprised the villagers didn't try to stop me. No outcry from the villagers, and Tam doesn't really explain the sword. Rand just kinda takes it. The ending was way too abrupt. And they cut the Manetheren speech. Yes, they do kind of rectify this in episode 2, but it just wasn't as powerful a speech as it was in the book. I just think that with episode 1, for fans of the series, you're gonna be hit with a lot of changes right off the bat, and that can kinda take you out of it, but then the second episode is much closer to the book. So I know I've had my complaints, but overall I'm actually pretty optimistic about this show. I think they have 14 books to adapt, so there's a lot of room for them to improve over time. There has been some serious pacing issues, there's some good stuff here and there, but there's also some odd changes. I do feel like sometimes the fans get blinded by all the flaws, and then they feel like it's a failed adaptation because it's not exactly like the books. But you're simply wrong, and as stubborn as someone from the Two Rivers, if you think that there's nothing good about this show. I think it's completely fair to have criticisms. I definitely have mine, but the show just isn't as bad as a lot of people are trying to make it out to be. Honestly, I'm just happy this is getting more people interested in reading the books. Anyway, that is it for my first impressions video. Let me know in the comments what you thought about the Wheel of Time show. If you have any hot takes, or if you agree or disagree with me on anything, let me know in the comments. Okay, the Dark Friends aren't watching, so please subscribe to the channel. They said that they'll set me free when I reach 50,000 subscribers. Please, it's so close now. I can almost taste the freedom. Anyway, if you want to join the read-along that I'm hosting for the Eye of the World, then make sure to join my Discord server linked in the description. Also, I want to say a big thank you to all my patrons.